Hello and welcome, and in today's video I'm going to be showing you the top 10 best Ark Tames if you're a noob, so let's get straight into it. In number 10 we've got the Megalodon, and I want to put this creature here as a basic underwater tame. This is really going to get you far. The Ichthyosaurus and the Basilow are good shouts as well, but if you want to go for a creature which is going to deal some damage and still be relatively easy to tame, they do spawn quite close to the shore, the Megalodon is your bet. If you just want speed, the Ichthyosaurus is the way to go, and if you want something a little bit more robust, then the Basilow is going to be the way to go, but those tames are a little bit more difficult and it is something to watch out for, whereas the Megalodon can be very simply done with a crossbow and some trank arrows and then just some fish meat. If you find one that's near the shore, that is your opportunity to get one, trank it out and tame it for yourself, and you will not regret having one of these for just general basic ocean travel. As they have the bleed ability, they can deal quite a large amount of damage, and they really can get a lot done considering how easy these things are to tame. Although this is somewhat of a challenge to tame, if you prepare this successfully, you won't struggle with it too much. If you build a very basic 2x2 trap, get some ramps and obviously door frames around it, then you can tame one of these things with relative ease. You just need a little bit of basic preparation and you want to be level 69.
Nice.
That may seem like a little bit of a stretch, but you can still be a noob to the game and be of a somewhat high level, and you don't even need the saddle to get some use out of this creature. You can just use it as a bodyguard until you get the saddle and just level it up the whole time, and you're going to have a good time with a creature like this. So once you have the saddle, you have much improved berry and fiber gathering with some insane damage on top of that too, which you really can't deny is going to be something very useful, especially if you're new to the game. Again, even if you don't have that saddle, you can still use it to attack creatures around you and you'll get a lot of benefit and protection from that. The saddle is going to be a very important part of all of the gathering aspects of this creature, but all of the protection, you can do that without a saddle. And they're also a great boss creature as well, especially for the dragon, but you're probably not quite thinking about that yet. I'm putting the Beals next, as I find this is a really effective just general traveling mount around the map, and its cement paste gathering is insane. And if you ever get caught up on gathering cement paste as a resource, either go to beaver dams or tame yourself one of these things and kill loads of insects. You're going to get tons of it and you're never going to need to really go out and get any more until you do actually in fact run out. But you can probably tell they are very fast, and considering the taming process isn't too difficult, apart from the biome, you're not going to have a lot of side effects to actually tame this thing. You're just going to be getting a good small travel mount that can also do very well underwater, and it's an insane resource gather for cementing paste. Considering all of that, when you put it together, this really is a creature which I think you should be getting, because even if you don't use it for that cementing paste gathering ability, which is a little bit of a shame to be honest, you still have a creature which deals reasonable damage. Actually, people don't give the Beals enough respect for the damage. It can also swim very fast, especially considering its size. It makes it so effective for if you're early to the game, because you're not going to need a lot of space to facilitate this creature as well, because it's so tiny, and obviously on top of that they can just pretty much travel anywhere. They can jump around. You can get a lot of use out of the traveling abilities of this creature. In number 7 I'm putting the Barry, and the only reason why I'm putting this further back is caving shouldn't be your main priority really, especially if you're a noob at the game. It's something to definitely think about, and that is why I'm putting the Baryonyx here, as it's still something which I think you should be taming even if you are a noob to the game. Just maybe you don't need to go into all of those caves yet, but if you feel up to it and you're prepared, then I'm not going to be the person to stop you and say, well, you need to get these other things done first. If you feel like you can do it and then you do it, that is very good, and you're making good progress in the game. But either way, a creature like this is just going to be great for general travel too. Yes, a Thyla could be a good shout as well, but I find maybe that's a little bit far-fetched for a noob, and I don't want to like undermine you in a way, but if you feel like you can go for a Thyla as well, that would be a great honourable mention on this list if you feel competent enough to do it. It all really does come down to confidence at a stage, as when you play the game more, you're more confident with your abilities, and obviously you're more knowledgeable on taming methods and things like that. This is a very simple knockout tame, and then feed some fish meat. You will have no troubles whatsoever, especially if you're playing on ASA, because Sometimes they don't even spawn in the swamp biome, they just spawn next to rivers, so the biome is even easier to find these things in. The Carno maybe is an unpopular opinion for you, but I am saying that this is a creature which, for beginners and noobs and all those people, this is a great first big carnivore to have. Yes, it's probably not going to be your first carnivore, in fact that might be the next creature coming up on the list, but this one is still going to definitely carry, and an aloe may seem a little bit intimidating. Again, if you want to go for it, then you go for it, and I'm not stopping you. But I would say the Carno is a good goal to set your eyes on. They deal the bleed ability with their second attack. They're not too difficult to trap and then knock out and then tame. It can be done with basic meat, but if you want to get prime and you've got prime on you, obviously, of course, use that. The tame is going to be much faster. Or you can simply kill an adult Carno if you're on ASA, and then if it has a baby attached to it, you can simply press E on that, and then boom, you've got yourself a Carno, and that's easier, obviously, and depending on your rates, it also will be quicker. But if the raising times are still unofficial, then it's going to take far longer. But I find on default single player settings, it barely takes any time at all, and you're not going to be struggling over all of that. It's just a really nice, neat, small carnivore that is capable of dealing quite a lot of damage, and I think people should be using these things more, especially if you are new or early to the game, because they're very easy to tame, at least from my perspective of things, and you can get a lot of use out of them. At number 5, I decided to put the Raptor, as this is definitely like something which you should be going for. There's nothing really like the Raptor in that stage of the game where you can unlock the saddle, and it is a very fast, versatile carnivore that can get you around the place and see a lot of progress being made just by you simply decimating a lot of things. Don't undermine especially a high level raptor. They can do a heck of a lot more than you may think they can. Yes, their health, stamina and weight isn't the best, but their damage does rack up reasonably well, and if you go for a higher level one, then you might find yourself actually having a one with decent weight, health and stamina. It's not going to be the highest in the world, a Carno will surely beat it, but you can still easily kill Carnos on something like a Raptor. But once you tame your own Carno, it's kind of like it's easier to kill the wild ones in a way. It's just how it scales in my opinion. But yeah, the Raptor is a very fast, versatile, great mount for just generally traversing around the map, which people don't give it enough credit for. It is a reasonable travel mount, and you can get a lot done with it, and it deals a very nice amount of damage. Fast attack speed, of course, it can be bowlered as well, so it's incredibly easy to tame. Simply bowler it and give it a few tranks. As long as the rest of the pack is somewhere else or has been killed off, then you'll have no troubles taming this thing whatsoever. Now I'm putting the Maywing here in at number 4 because it is just such a good travel mount, and as long as you have Genesis Part 2, this is going to be a really good one for you. And I think it spawns on Fielder as well, which is a free DLC. But if you do not have any of those maps or you're not playing on them, it's fine. You can pretend like I was never talking about this creature at all. But I think you should still have knowledge of this. Its saddle is unlocked at level 18, and it is the best traveling mount out there with no competition. You can use a couple of signs, usually about 3, to trap this thing within them and then crank it out with no issues whatsoever. And then you can even get a really high level one just straight off the bat, and you have yourself the best travel mount in Ark. Considering this saddle was unlocked at level 18, like I've said before, it is just insane how much speed and versatility you can get out of these creatures, which is why they're just so good for noobs or people who are early into the game. But again, if you don't start on the map where they actually do spawn, you can obviously transfer them over, but I won't get into transfers today, and that's so you can get them onto your other map, or simply wait and then when you go on those maps, tame one and see what you think of them. They're also pretty good swimmers as well, act as a portable feeding trough for when you're breeding stuff, and they can gather berries too. At number 3, I've decided to put the Stego here, as this is an incredibly useful berry gatherer, and it'll probably be the best one really just across the whole game. Yes, the Strider and the Bronto and the Diplo may be gathering more berries, but in terms of just how easy these things are to tame and just how many berries you can simply get out of them, it is truly insane, and I love the just like ratio between how easy these things are to tame and just how much use you actually get out of them. A parasaur and a trike is a good shout as well. I'll give them a brief honourable mention here, but I'm mainly going to be talking about the stego because I really just prefer this creature. And yes, a parasaur is probably what you're going to net yourself first, and that is totally fine. Don't feel ashamed to tame yourself a parasaur and really like the parasaur, but try and aim for something like a stego in the future afterwards, and you're going to have a much better time with berry gathering. Also, if you're getting into PvP as well, which, you know, most people probably aren't, especially if you're early on into the game, then you can use these things as turret soakers as well. So if you're thinking of doing some basic raids and there's a base that you want to raid which got maybe, let's say, a couple of turrets or even just one turret on it, then try and soak it with the stego and see what happens, you know, test it out. But also, you know, be careful because those situations can very easily end badly, and also if the players are online as well, you can find yourself in a bit of a sticky situation. But this is really a creature which I think you should be considering to get, and if you don't get one, what are you doing? Then at number 2, I've decided to put the Ark Tames, as this is really going to be something which you're going to want to go for. Again, these saddles are unlocked in the like level 60 odds, but really if you get a basic trap and then trank this thing out, or sometimes you don't even need a trap if you're going for low levels, you're going to find no issue with taming this thing, apart from the biome can be a little bit hostile. Again, just some basic preparation of items and things to fend off some enemies, and maybe the creature which is actually in the number 1 spot as well to help you out along the way. It really does make this tame a lot easier actually. And then you've got yourself an insanely great transporter of all things metal, crystal and obsidian, because it's got 50% weight reduction on all of those. Its saddle also acts as a smithy, so if you ever need to craft some metal tools or repair metal tools on the go, that is a very useful thing. And if you think you're doing caves again, that is going to be very useful, because the Raasclark or centipedes, you might not know what I mean by Raasclark yet, but you will eventually. Then yeah, they will break your armor if they do spit at you, so you know you want to be careful for that, and actually just avoid them if possible if you're getting into caving scenarios. But eventually one of them is just going to break your armor, and having some metal in your RG just so you can repair that once you're out of the cave is going to be very, very nice to you. Then you can pick up a wealth of creatures too. If you have a friend as well, you can obviously pick them up with this, and you can pick up a small creature in the mouth of this tame as well. They also have a regen ability, so if your RG is low on health, simply kill something that's relatively small. If something is already dead, simply eat that dead corpse. That's why if you actually kill something that's RG around, they'll go for it. Then at number 1 is the Pteranodon though, and although this isn't as good as a creature compared to the RG, at least from my opinion, as a noob or person who's very early to Ark, this is just such an easy tame, and it is going to elevate your progress so much through Ark. It really does it just is deserving of the number 1 spot. If the Maywing spawned on the island, it would take the number 1 spot, but because of the maps being probably the ones that you're not going to be starting on, yeah, this creature easily takes the number 1 spot, being a fast, very viable traveling mount, and it really does add a new dimension to the game when you can actually fly around the place. On top of that, they are ridiculously easy to tame. Simply boulder them and then either club them out or use some tranks. You can only need like maybe a couple of tranks, so if you're taming even like a high level one, maybe 10 tranks at a maximum. They've never really used more than that for me when going up to 150, and then obviously it's going to be easy. Trank it out like that, then feed it some meat or prime meat if you've got it, of course. The only real difficulty is going to be going down to that saddle, as the chitin and keratin can sometimes be a little bit of a difficulty, but I would definitely go for the chitin side of things and find any insects, really small ones, so like the ants, the Titanomira or the Meganera, which are the dragonflies. I'm using the technical terms here, but you know, I'm trying to simplify it down a little bit because you may not know what a Meganera or Titanomira is, and genuinely I wouldn't have known what a Titanomira was before I started playing Ark, but I did know Meganera because I learned a little bit about the Carboniferous at that point, and here you can see as that is how simple the Pteranodon tame is. I've just bouldered it there, and then I'm shooting it with a long neck with some tranks, and it only took 1. Again, you're probably going to be using a bow or a crossbow. The top 10 best beginner Ark Tames, and that means just if you're new to the game, not if you're early on in the game. In at number 10, I've decided to put the Carnotaurus, as I find this is is really an effective and useful creature to have in your roster. It is just so nice and very easy to tame. Yes, you could say the aloe is a great one as well, and I'll give it here as a spot on here, sorry, as an honorable mention. But I find the Carno is just the better creature for me, but I'll let you decide that for yourself. What is the better creature for you in terms of ease of taming and just the overall size of the creature and mobility and damage and health, and all of those factors really do play in. And for me, the Carno is always the creature which I'll go for. Feel free to disagree in the comments down below. I do not mind if your opinion is different to mine. But for me, again, the Carno is just the one for me. Compared to the aloe, I vastly prefer the smaller size, and I like just having a smaller carnivore. I also find they are easier to tame as well, just by a little bit, because trapping them is easier considering the aloe usually does spawn in a pack. Although in ASA that's less apparent because baby versions of the creatures can spawn, and it's pretty much the same in terms of difficulty. The only real difference is the Carno is still slightly easier, as killing a Carno is a little bit easier than killing an aloe, especially if there's some others about as well. But you know, there might be some other Carnos about in this instance too. The Carno also does the bleed ability, and I like the amount of mobility it has. I can feel reasonably stealthy and quite good with myself while traveling around and demolishing loads of creatures around me with this thing, and that is why I really like it as a beginner Ark Tame. Next up, we've got the UT, and although you might not be thinking about bosses quite yet, I find this is a really nice one if you are new to the game, as yes, maybe a Rex is something which you go for, and a Rex is something which you definitely can, but I find the UT in most places is generally just a better carnivore to use around the map. The Spino is a great option as well, but I find the UT is the easiest option to tame out of those three, and you still got that courage roar and the fear roar, tons of mobility and a lot of damage dealing. They are just really great carnivores to run around the map with and use all across Ark. They are very sufficient for all of your big carnivore needs. Their stamina is good, their health is good, their weight is good, their damage is good, and obviously they've got those abilities as well. So, you know, they're even nicer to use, and they're better at swimming than the Rex. I know you're probably not going to be using these things as underwater carnivore, but I find they really are not the worst for that job, and if you need to cross some sections of water, you won't find it too difficult to do that with the UT. Next up, we've got the Stego. You can either really choose between this, the Trike, and maybe the Parasaur, possibly a Diplo or a Bronto as well, although this is my preferable one. Also, sorry about all the flickering in this B-roll. I should probably re-record it when ASA sort of fixes itself up a little bit, because yeah, it wasn't doing the best when I was recording this, and shadow flickering was very commonplace in the game. It still really is on the island. Not really on Scorch, because there's a lot less trees about and generally a lot less shadows about, or maybe the issue's just fixed really on that map. The Stego obviously has gone through some TLC for release, and since it's been released, sorry, in the early stages of the game, and it makes it even better, because if you're a PvP Ark player, then even if you're new to the game, you could possibly do some lower level raiding with one of these creatures. You can get into the high end ones as well, but turret soaking with this thing on maybe a kind of mid-tier base is going to be something which you can do solo with one of these creatures, obviously by using the, I think, hardened plate is the one for turret soaking. The heavy plate is good for gathering wood, and the sharpened plate will gather you all your berries and things like that, which is what I would use it for from a PvE perspective, and obviously that's what I mainly use it for as a PvE player. Then at number 7, I've decided to put the Pteranodon, as well, yes, they're going to be really great views to begin a tame. I find there's some better ones out there. You may have put this higher, and that is totally acceptable, but this really, for me, deserves to be in the number 7 spot. No higher or no lower. It is a very easy fly to tame, probably the easiest kind of really good traveling mount out there to tame, just apart from one creature which has actually made it right the way into the number 1 spot, because I find it's better and it's even easier to tame than this thing. The only real difficulty is the map that it spawns on, but still, as a beginner Ark player, you might have access to those maps and might not, and you can differ this list depending on what maps you have. But I am contributing all maps into this, but mainly kind of focusing on maps like the island and those 3 DLCs, because, you know, in theory, most people are just going to have a lot more playtime on those, and they're going to be playing those first, or just generally playing those because they don't have the other maps. Then the real difficulty for this is the saddle. The chitin or keratin can be a little bit difficult to get. I find go with chitin, it tends to be easier. Just killing kind of insects that you can find around, the small ones like the Titanomira and the Meganeura, and you'll have a good time with getting that chitin. You can obviously get it through keratin as well from the carb enemies, which are the turtles you'll find on the beaches, but go through insects because you'll get it done a lot faster, and obviously they take a lot less time to kill. I wasn't really quite that knowledgeable back in like 2015, 2016. But at least I do know that now. Obviously the Pteranodon is very easy to tame. Bowler it, and you'd use a club or some tranks. Club if it's a low level, tranks if it is a higher one, and then saddle it up and you get yourself a fast, agile flyer, which can be used for both PvE and PvP scenarios. The Thyla maybe you wouldn't think of as a beginner tame, but trust me, if you take your precautions properly, you can get this creature tamed properly, well, and efficiently. If you have yourself access to the Thyla saddle, which I think is in the level 40 or 50 range, as far as I'm concerned, you can obviously check that as well. Then this creature is really going to be just great for you to have, as the trap can be very simply made with some wood and then simply trank it out when it's in the trap. Obviously look for one on the rubber trees. You'll probably want yourself a Pteranodon as well, or just a flyer to get around. You can do it on foot with some other creatures, but I find a Pteranodon is quite an easy and effective creature to use to tame one. Then once you've got it into said trap, then trank it out. Obviously make sure you've got some armor on too, at least chitin really, because you don't want to be killing yourself in a scenario like this. Put some sleeping bags down if you're not sure if you will survive, because they're going to come in real handy. So you don't have to go back all the way to your base, and you might not have another Pteranodon lying around, so it's going to be a long while until you get back to the redwoods, and that Pteranodon might die as well because you can't get back to it in time. But then once you've tamed one, you've got yourself one of the best, if not the best creature really on the island, just for everything in general. Obviously it's no berry gatherer, but it still can deal the bleed ability, and it can climb any kind of wall or vertical surface. It is extremely mobile and generally an all-round great caving and carnivore to have in your roster. It is an amazing creature, and I really do like people that use a creature like this, and I like using a creature like this. It really is a good one, which actually, if you prepare for it, beginners can actually do it with relative ease. In number 5, we have got ourselves the Baryonyx, and this is going to be the best caving creature out there for you. Yes, I said the Thyla was good. The Saber can also do some stuff as well, but the Barry is really going to be the one you're going to look out for when it comes to caving. Again, you might not be thinking about that yet, but trust me, get one of these things, they'll be great for caving. They have the health, stamina, and agility to get through those things, and on top of that as well, they are the right size to fit into all of them, really, apart from the artifact of the Skylord Cave. Don't even try bringing any creature into that. You're going to have to do that one on foot. They also just are great creatures for general mobility around the map as well. They can get a lot done when it comes to travel. Not quite as much as the Thyla, but they can jump around, and they are really good swimmers, which the Thyla really can't justify. Also, I do find they're a little bit easier to tame too. Their special ability while underwater is the fact that they can do a spin attack, stunning creatures up to the size of a Megalodon, and that makes them really good for the underwater caves as well, which again, you may not be thinking about. Don't know why I said it twice, but either way, yeah, you might not be thinking about that yet, but trust me, that time will come at some point, and it's just better to prepare first, and you can still use these things for a great traveling mount and combat creature. Next up, I've decided to put the Crystal Wyverns on the list, and yes, the Wyvern does deserve some attention and a lot of respect, but if you do have Crystal Isles, which is a free DLC, obviously Raasclark is as well, so you can have access to the Wyverns for free, then hop on Crystal Isles and get yourself some Crystal Wyverns. You do need to be level 60, so get yourself a note run done. If you don't know how to do that, look up, there'll be some simple tutorials online for note runs that you can do on Crystal Isles. Trust me, it will be easy, you'll have no issues doing that whatsoever. Then get yourself some trank arrows and probably a sufficient trap to trap one of these wyverns. Then obviously you're going to knock it out and get that primal crystal. Then find a crystal wyvern which you'll find to be the most desirable for you. For my preference, it is blood crystal wyverns, but you might like the emerald crystal wyverns or the tropical crystal wyverns more. Just pick whichever one is most appealing to you. Then there's a specific spot you can go on its back, kind of where you would ride it and get onto that spot of it, and then, you know, just press E and it's going to start passive taming, and you can just stay on that spot, and then every time it tells you to feed it, keep pressing E, and then eventually you'll tame this thing. Make sure you have enough primal crystal though, because that can be a little bit of a difficulty. Always use the app Dodo Dex if you're unsure of what you're going to need for taming. It's not going to be the most accurate thing in the world, but it will give you quite a good assumption for what you can expect. So overestimate that a little bit and then you should be fine. But yes, they're the wyverns, but just so much easier to tame, and I find their elemental abilities are even better, and they're not really difficult to tame. In number 3, I've decided to put the Deinonychus. Again, you might not think of this as a tame that you can get quite early on as a beginner, but still, these things are really easy. Go onto Valguero if you haven't already and get some of these things spawn in the Chalk Cliffs biome. I'm not actually sure what spawn point it is, but you know, it's the biome that looks like this. I'm pretty sure it's quite central. It's sort of near the big lake that's in the middle of the map. Then you're going to want to find yourself some Deinonychus nests. Kind of make sure you have a grappling hook, or actually you can just kamikaze, go in and then try and run out, and then wherever you die, then just pick up your body from there and get out and go to your base. Then just put some torches around this egg and raise this thing, and then obviously have sufficient meat at the time to bring this thing up. They really aren't very difficult. You don't have to worry about imprint and all of that yet. They're not going to be used for boss fighting when you're first getting them. Once you've got that saddle though, you can really use these things as great carnivores to travel around the map with, and once you've got a nice breeding pair, you don't have to worry about taming them this way anymore. And then obviously you can worry about imprints and all of that when you start getting these creatures ready for doing your boss fights, as they'll have a better chance if obviously they've been fully imprinted, and it's just going to help their stats all round. They also take no fall damage, which is just great for their traveling, and like the Thyra, they can scale any kind of wall or vertical surface. They really are good tames for traveling, and I love them for this use. And considering how easy they are to tame, for all you beginners out there, really go on Valguero and tame one of these things, because you will definitely not regret it. And you can always just transfer it onto whatever map maybe you're trying on a little bit more, because Valguero might not be your main map at your time. In number 2, I've decided to put the Argentavis, as I find this is just generally a really great creature all round. It has a variety of abilities, and generally it is one which you can find abundantly across the island's mountains, and it is just going to be a go-to. You may not consider it as a beginner tame again for the saddle level, which I think is 61, something around that, but trust me, with note runners you can get there pretty quickly, and you can still be a beginner to the game and get into the level 60s. Then once you've got one, which can be done with a very simple trap, I advise you to use a trap, and then you lure it in, and then you obviously close the trap off. Trank this thing out, you can just use a crossbow. You don't really need to worry about the long necks for even things like that. You don't really need to worry about the long neck for most things, where you can still use trank arrows right to the late stages of the game, but you know, it's advisable, and you can even get into shocking tranks too, but trank arrows will do just fine for a tame like this. And then you've got weight reduction, things like metal, crystal, and obsidian. They can carry all kinds of creatures, as well as that their smithy acts as saddle, making them really great for traveling to places where you go in caving. Just carry your baryonyx in the claws of the RG, take it to wherever you need to go for whatever cave you're doing, and then when you get out, if those ultra fluids have damaged any of your armor, then you can simply just repair it in the RG. Also, if your RG is low in health, you can always eat something, and not in your inventory explicitly, but just eat a dead creature, or just kill a creature and eat it once it's dead, and then you're going to get yourself a nice regen buff, and it will definitely come in handy. And at number 1, I'm deciding to put the Maywing, as I find, considering its saddle is unlocked at level 18, it is absolutely insane how good this is as a glider. And yes, you may not have Gen 2 at your disposal, and that is perfectly okay. You can always moderate the list and get something like the RG or the Crystal Wyvern or the Deinonychus for all of those needs, but I just find they are just so good at gliding, I do have to warrant putting them in at the number 1 spot. They're the best travel mounts in the game in my opinion, and they're so easy to tame. A few signposts, you just trap them in a position, and then boom, like that, just give them a couple of trank arrows. The saddle again is unlocked at level 18 really early on, and you can have yourself this amazing creature, which is, in my opinion, again, the best gliding creature in the game. They also are really good swimmers as well, which you might not expect out of these things, but when you could kind of think of them as a platypus, it sort of makes sense. They also do act as a portable breeding trough as well, so maybe if your Deinonychus needs feeding early on, you can get yourself that Maywing to feed it. Obviously you can just put meat in its inventory, but you know, I'm fleshing it out a little bit. And on top of that, they can gather berries too, like the Stego, but they've just got so many other nice attributes that I really do have to put them in at this spot. But anyway, that is the end of today's video, and I really hope that you will have enjoyed, as I definitely enjoyed making this one. As always, comment down below what is the best beginner Ark Tame for you, and if you didn't agree with this, then put your 10 in the comments below, and I'll see you all later.